Navigating the complexities of our own minds can be challenging. Welcome to Hansei Ventures. My goal is to give you the psychological tools and insights you need for real personal growth. In each video, we break down the science behind our habits, emotions, and interactions. The evolutionary mismatch. When we talk about getting rich, it often sounds like a modern problem: mastering investments, understanding markets, building businesses. But underneath all of that is something far older: a brain that evolved for a completely different world. Tons of thousands of years ago, wealth didn't exist the way it does now. Survival was immediate. You hunted, gathered, consumed, and repeated. There was no retirement plan. There were no interest rates. The future was uncertain, often brutally short. Your brain was sculpted in that world. Its primary directive was simple: maximize survival right now, so it becomes exquisitely turned to short term rewards. Finding food gave you dopamine, resting conserved energy. Delaying gratification made little sense when tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. Fast forward to the modern world. We've built systems, investments, credit, business models that reward patience, planning, and consistency over decades, but inside, that ancient wiring still hums. The part of your brain that once scanned for predators now scans for discomfort. The part that pushed you to eat barriers before nightfall now urges you to buy, to consume, to act now. This is what psychologists call an evolutionary mismatch: a mind built for immediate survival living in a world that rewards long term strategy. Wealth creation, at its core, is about mastering that mismatch: temporal control and delayed gratification. One of the biggest psychological barriers to wealth is temporal discounting, the tendency to undervalue future rewards compared to immediate ones. You've felt it before: that twinkle when you consider investing but end up buying something instead, the I'll start saving later instinct, the subtle emotional flatness of long term rewards. In the 1970s, Walter Michel's marshmallow test made this tangible. Children were offered one marshmallow now, or two if they could wait. Some waited, some didn't. Decades later, the one who waited had on average better life outcomes, academically, socially, financially. But here is the overlooked detail: the children who waited didn't just grit their teeth, they used strategies. They distracted themselves. They reimagined the marshmallow as something less tempting. They engineered their environment to help them wait. That's what wealth builders do, consciously or not. They create structures that make delayed gratification easier: automated investments, budgeting systems, environments with fewer impulsive triggers. They don't rely on willpower. They design around their instincts. Take investing. If you invest $500 a month in a broad market index, earning a modest average annual return of 7%, in 30 years, you'll have around $610,000. That's not magic, that's compounding. But here is the catch: first 10 years feel like nothing. Most of the growth happens later. If your brain can't emotionally tolerate the boring early years, you'll never see the payoff. Wealth is emotionally counterintuitive. It rewards those who can feel the future as vividly as the present. Um, Risk, perception, and emotional framing. Even if you master delayed gratification, Another psychological barrier looms: loss aversion. Kahneman and Tversky's research showed that the pain of losing $100 feels about twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $100. This bias shapes countless financial decisions. People avoid investing because they fear downturns. Even though historically markets rise over time, they stick with safe but stringent financial behaviors because emotionally, loss feels unbearable. Wealthy individuals aren't immune to fear, they just frame it differently. They zoom out instead of seeing each market dip as a threat. They view it as a temporary fluctuation in a long narrative. They lean on probability, not emotion. This is why systems matter so much. Atomic contributions, diversified portfolios, preset decision rules. These aren't just financial tools, they are psychological armor. They protect you from your limbic system in moments of panic. And the risk isn't just financial, it's also social and emotional. Starting a business, changing careers, or pursuing unconventional paths all trigger ancestral fears of exclusive and failure. Wealth building often requires walking into uncertainty your brain was designed to avoid. The wealthy don't ignore fear, they train their response to it. Identity, beliefs, and behavioral compounding. Perhaps the most underestimated psychological lever in wealth is identity. If you see yourself as bad with money, not disciplined, or not the type to invest, your behavior will unconsciously reinforce that narrative. Identity acts like a thermostat. It pulls behavior back to a familiar setting. The wealthiest people rarely frame their habits as temporary tactics, they anchor them in identity. I'm the kind of person who invests automatically. I'm someone who lives below my means. I'm a builder, not just a consumer. This isn't self help fluff, it's behavioral science. James Clear's work on habit formation shows that identity based habits are far more sustainable than outcome based ones. You don't try to save, you become a saver. You don't try to invest, you are an investor. And then there's behavioral compounding. Just as money compounds over time, so do decisions. A small pattern of overspending or under investing doesn't ruin you in a week, but over decades, it shapes entirely different financial destinies. Likewise, small, consistent, positive behaviors, saving a fixed percentage, learning continuously, managing impulses, compounding into massive differences later. Two people with the same income can end up in opposite worlds 20 years later, not because one had better opportunities, but because one had better psychological defaults. Real world narratives and levers. Let's bring this down from theory. Consider Maya and Danielle. Both graduate from college at 22 with similar jobs and salaries. Maya spends freely, nothing reckless. Just the standard pattern. When she gets a raise, she upgrades her lifestyle. She tells herself she'll invest when things settle down. Danielle takes a different approach. He automates a small percentage of his income into investments before he ever sees it. He learns to sit with the emotional boredom of slow growth. He reads about behavioral biases so he can recognize his own fear during downturns. At 32, their lives feel similar. At 42, the gap is clear. Danielle has assets, optionality, and resilience. Maya has memories, but little financial freedom. Not because one is smarter, but because one engineered their psychology and the other drifted with instinct. Or take entrepreneurs, many who build wealth through business aren't simply chasing money. They're deeply comfortable with uncertainty. They frame risk not as danger, but as exploration. They see temporary failures as data, not identity threats. That mental reframing allows them to persist through the volatility that others can't emotionally tolerate. And finally, think about wealth as a narrative, not just a number. Most people see it as an end goal, a finish line, but the wealthy often see it as a byproduct of systems, decisions, and time. They tell themselves stories that make future reward emotionally compelling. They visualize, plan, and align their daily actions with narrative arc that stretches decades. When your future becomes emotionally real, you behave differently in the present. Our exploration of the mind is only beginning. The next tool we uncover could be the one that changes everything for you. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.